All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the stream. I am Brian Gotro. I'm with Louisiana 4-H's Youth Wetlands Program as a coordinator, and we have a very special guest with us today. We have Miss Susan Russell, who is the Executive Director of Keep Louisiana Beautiful.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Great. So today we are here to talk about litter and litter problems. I do want to thank everybody that's joining us real quick and welcome y'all. This is my first time doing a live stream. I don't know about you, Miss Russell, but we're excited to go today. All right. Okay, so what I want to know from you viewers is, since we're talking about litter today, what do you guys know about litter? I want to know if you know what exactly litter is. And Miss Russell, maybe this is a good time while they're thinking about their answers for you to share some information about Keep Louisiana Beautiful.
Sure, love to. Thank you. So at Keep Louisiana Beautiful, we are a statewide nonprofit organization. We have about 39 affiliates throughout the state of Louisiana, and we work every day to reduce litter, to reduce waste, to increase recycling, and to educate adults as well as children about how to be good environmental stewards. Our goal is to protect and preserve Louisiana's beautiful, beautiful state that we live in. And we do that in a number of different ways. We provide training and resources and grants, and we have a wonderful education program for kids K through 5. And we do it with a ton of volunteers and participants. So last year we had about 170,000 volunteers that worked with us and made this happen. So it all boils down to everybody playing a role in this and being a part of it and doing your part to make sure Louisiana stays a beautiful and clean state.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we have a couple of people saying hi. We have Miss Cabell Mouton saying hi, and Miss Christina Duger. Thank you all for joining us today. So the question that we asked was, what do you think is litter? To our audience, and we haven't gotten any responses yet, but maybe Miss Russell, you could give some hints about what exactly is litter.
Well, litter can be a number of different things, but basically it is when an item is misplaced or when an item is not properly disposed of. And there are several ways that you can dispose of an item properly. And so first, you can recycle an item. And so if you have recycling in your area, we encourage you to learn the proper way to recycle, to reduce contamination, and to make recycling more profitable. So items such as especially single-use plastics and cardboard and paper and newspapers, those are items that instead of throwing them in the trash can, which ultimately goes to the landfill, we encourage you to properly dispose of that in the recycling bin. You can also consider composting. Often composting is a wonderful and proper way to dispose of food waste. Now about 28% of the food waste winds up in landfills. So if you decide to do some composting at home, that could be some great fertilizer for your gardens. We also encourage people to reuse and repurpose items. So get creative and try to find some alternative uses for some of your items. And then, of course, the trash can. Always, always a proper way to dispose of items.
All right, thank you. So we have one comment that was saying that maybe litter could be wrappers or plastic water bottles. I think that they could be litter, but what's the thing that, Ms. Russell, that all these items have in common if they're littered? What turns them from trash into litter?
When it's not properly disposed of. So when it's put into a trash can, it becomes trash. And when it goes into a recycling bin, it becomes a recyclable item. But when it is thrown on the ground or improperly disposed of, then it becomes litter. And then it becomes very harmful in so many different ways.
Right. Excellent. So another question for the audience is, since we know that litter is trash that's not disposed of properly, what do y'all think are some really commonly littered items that you would find? I would love to hear your answers on this. about this. And Ms. Russell, maybe you can give us some different ways that they could think about it, whether it be like material or the form of the object.
Yeah, so litter comes in many different shapes and sizes. Everybody produces about 4.6 pounds of waste a day. So when you think that Louisiana has 4.7 million people, that means we are producing 21.6 million pounds of trash a day. So that makes you realize why it's so important to dispose of it properly, because when it's not, those pieces become potential litter.
Excellent, excellent. All right. I'm going to go ahead and put up a graphic that maybe can share different types of litter. We do have an answer. We have water bottles as being a common form of litter. Oh, fast food packaging as well. Ms. Russell, can you share what is maybe the most commonly found types of litter?
So the most littered item, not only in Louisiana, but in America, would be cigarette butts and cigarette packaging at 38%. Paper comes in second at 22%, and plastics at 19%. So if you look at litter on roadways, 74% of all litter on roadways is attributed to motorists and pedestrians. So let's make sure we carry a litter bag in our car so that we don't accidentally, or even worse, purposefully litter from our vehicle.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you all for bearing with me as I try to show some of these graphics that show just where litter is coming from. As another example, let's see. We see that most litter in that last graphic is cigarette butts, but and then like Ms. Russell said, that the sources of litter include motorists and pedestrians. And that's really important, because what does that tell you? Is litter intentional, most litter intentional or unintentional?
Most litter is intentional, unfortunately. And so when you look at the high percentages of litter on roadways coming from motorists and pedestrians, the majority of that is intentional, unfortunately. Now, when you look at items, areas outside of the roadways, the most littered area would be at transition points. And so that kind of makes sense. So if you are drinking a Coke or smoking a cigarette and you're getting ready to enter a store, you need to dispose of it. And so that's why we really encourage store owners and businesses to have proper trash and ash receptacles outside of their place of business, because studies show that when there are receptacles, people will use them. And when they're not there, of course, those items, unfortunately, turn into litter when they throw it on the ground. So if we can target making sure we have proper trash and ash receptacles in our public spaces and in front of our businesses, and make sure motorists and pedestrians don't litter, then we've made huge headway.
Absolutely. So we have people answering that cigarette butts and wrappers are very common forms of litter. And as you just shared, Ms. Russell, cigarette butts are the most commonly found type of litter. But after that, the most commonly common material are plastics. We find plastics all over the place. So I want to welcome anyone that's joined us right now. We're talking about litter in Louisiana with Keep Louisiana Beautiful's Executive Director, Ms. Susan Russell. And we've just been discussing about what are the most common forms of litter, and we've talked about cigarette butts, and now we're talking about plastic. And so what I want to ask everyone now who's watching in the audience is to give some reasons. Why do you think that we see so much plastic litter here in Louisiana? What are some reasons on this? We'll give a few minutes on that. And Ms. Russell, what are some common plastic items that you see whenever Keep Louisiana Beautiful does cleanups?
Well, the number one, of course, is a single-use plastic bottle. Soft drink, sports bottles, those are always number one. And I would say second would be fast food plastic containers. Those by far outweigh everything else that we see when we do cleanups.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. So we're going to wait just a couple more minutes here or moments here, but I do want to share a graph with everyone that maybe can give you an idea on why we see so much plastic. So this graph right here shows global production in plastic. So what does everyone notice from that?
A lot of plastic.
I don't
Mhm.
Sorry. I don't know about you, but my grandparents' generation didn't grow up with a whole lot of plastic when they were young. But in my generation, it is everywhere.
Well, I'm a little older than you, Brian, and so I can remember as a child, we used to have milk delivered in glass bottles, and we didn't have bottled plastic, bottled water in plastic bottles. That was not even a thing. We didn't have fast food restaurants at every corner. The word microplastics, no one knew what that was. That didn't even exist. So things have changed a lot in the last 50 years. In the 50s, the plastic explosion took off, and plastic is a very useful item. It's flexible, it's durable, it's lightweight, it's easy to transport, and we're not saying anything about plastics. It makes our lives a lot easier. You can't go through the course of your day without touching and using something that is made from plastics. The big problem really comes in with a lot of the single-use plastic items that we can eliminate by using reusable bottles and by really making some small changes. We don't need to use plastic straws, for example. They have metal ones or paper ones. So it's really taking a look at what you consume, what you use, and deciding what simple changes that you can make personally that will help reduce litter and the plastic, single-use plastic problem that we're experiencing.
Thanks so much. So we have a couple of answers from the audience. One, that it takes a long time to decompose, and people recognizing that, yes, so many things are made out of plastic. So I want to share with everybody a little bit about plastic decomposition, or about decomposition in general. So to decompose means to break down into smaller pieces. And generally things can break down through biological action, like microorganisms such as bacteria or fungi. Sunlight can also break things down, but the important thing that makes something truly decompose is that it becomes available as food eventually for other organisms, for other microorganisms, again, like bacteria or fungi. Plastics never really decompose. They do get smaller over time, and they can become so small that we really have trouble seeing them. But if we look at this chart here, this is just an example of some decomposition rates. These are just average estimates. And again, these decomposition rates are really for things to kind of disappear, not truly be able to be used as energy. So we see plastics last an extremely long time. So that plastic water bottle that gets littered is going to be around for hundreds of years. That is one of the things that we find with plastics. So as Ms. Russell said, cutting back on our plastic consumption is really important. I agree that plastics are a wonderful material. I'm using a computer that is made out of plastic. Many of my milk comes in a plastic bottle, but some of these single-use items that we use just once and we throw away are what's causing some problems in our environment. So cutting back on our plastic consumption is important. So I'd like to hear everyone else's ideas too about how you can cut down on your single-use plastics. What are some things that you do in your household that you can share with everybody? And I'm going to bring Ms. Russell back.
It is estimated that by 2050, we'll have more plastics in the oceans than fish. So we need to think of that every time we reach for that single-use plastic item.
Absolutely. And then there's some problems. with litter in the environment and plastics in particular that while we're waiting on answers, we can talk about. So litter is harmful, right? We know it's harmful for a few reasons. One, it costs a lot to clean up each year. We're spending billions of dollars to clean it up each year. And it can also be harmful from people. We actually have a comment in our box about finding disposable gloves and masks on the side of the road and on parking lots. We're actually seeing an increase of that during the last month or so. And as you can imagine, these used gloves and masks are actually a health hazard, very much for them. But one of the biggest problems about litter in the environment is it's harmful to the environment and to the wildlife that's in there. Wildlife that eats plastics in particular. Plastic isn't food, so it winds up contributing to malnutrition in that organism. That malnutrition can eventually lead to starvation. It can reduce their reproductive potential, and it can straight out cause harm by lacerating or puncturing them. Unfortunately, we've seen a lot of bad images of spoons, for instance, being stuck in a turtle's throat, and it can also entangle them. I think one of the big messages I received growing up was to cut my six-pack ring holders so that wildlife wouldn't get entangled in them. But unfortunately, fishing nets, balloon strings, all sorts of litter still does entangle wildlife each year. One of the things about these plastics in particular existing in the environment and not breaking down is as they get smaller, they eventually become a category of what we call microplastics. And microplastics are particularly bad for the environment. They smell like food to a variety of organisms, and they eat them. They can leach chemicals into the environment. And our microplastic situation isn't getting any better. We see that the Gulf of Mexico has about the highest microplastic concentrations in the world right now. This is an example, an image of some microplastics. This is from Dr. Mark Benfield. He is a researcher here at Louisiana State University that has helped to show that the Gulf of Mexico has some of the highest microplastic concentrations in the world. And so you can see all these little objects, these threads and fibers, very hard to see, are having some impacts on the environment. So we want to share some of what the audience typed in about how we can cut down on our single-use plastics. Let's see, bring your own shopping bags wherever you go. Absolutely, absolutely. And I know this is difficult in some places right now during this breakout. My grocery store is requesting that people not bring them in, or at least they don't want to bag your groceries if you bring it in. So I'm okay. I'm bagging my own groceries right now, but we have to be aware of that. Another comment from Christina is upcycles, crafts, and projects. That's a great one also to hear about, everyone's favorite upcycle project. Reusable water bottles. Awesome. Yes, water bottles are such a commonly littered item, and by just switching to reusable water bottles, we can make a big difference.
Brian, we also have a lot of power as consumers, and we shouldn't forget that when we go to purchase items, we need to let our values and our opinions be known to the store owners. And that can be anything from going to get a fountain drink and requesting that they stop using styrofoam cups, or bringing your own cup into the store. Now, I know right now that's not allowed, but once we get over this virus and the restrictions imposed upon it, then we can. So you can bring your own cup in, or you can make sure that they know that you're not purchasing it because you don't support styrofoam. You can also write to businesses that use excess packaging. And when we order online, I know a lot of people are ordering online right now, make sure that your requests are consolidated so that it comes all in one box. A lot of people are ordering takeout from restaurants right now, but we don't need to accept the plastic forks and the napkin packages and the straws. Let that be there and let them know we don't need that, and that you can use yours at home. And when there's styrofoam takeout containers, ask them to consider using paper ones and alternative ones that are friendlier to the environment. So we don't just have to take this. We can also use the power of our voice and our pocketbook to let our those things that are important to us be known. And they will change when it affects their business.
All right, thank you. And so we got some more comments along with that. Yes, refusing to go plastics, and I think that is what you're talking about, Ms. Russell, is using your choice as a consumer to choose less plastics. We have another comment that says cooking at home as much as possible. Yes, and I think we're all getting quite acquainted with that if we weren't before, learning how to cook at home. So those are some things that we can do to reduce the amount of plastics that we use. What about litter in general? So I want to ask the audience that again. So we have some ideas and some solutions to help reduce our plastic use, but what can we do to really cut down on the litter problem in Louisiana? So Ms. Russell, while everyone's thinking about that for their answers, what are some of these significant impacts that litter can have, for instance, on our seafood industry?
So you were talking about the microplastics earlier, and the study that Dr. Benefiel released in 2017 that showed the Gulf of Mexico has as high concentrations of microplastics as any other body of water in the world, which is alarming. So when you think of the seafood industry in Louisiana and how that affects our economy, if that becomes toxic, then it's going to affect people's livelihoods. It'll affect our ability to have confidence in the food that we eat that's coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. We have to remember that the Mississippi watershed plays a huge part of that as well. So, we're getting all the trash from all the other states. We're doing a bad enough job as it is, but we also get trash from other states. And unfortunately, it all dumps into the Gulf of Mexico. So we really need to get a handle on that. 80% of marine debris comes from land. It starts as a land-based litter. So it is on roadsides. It's when your trash cans aren't properly secured in wind and rain, and it tosses down the street, and it winds up in ditches or in our storm drains, and ultimately in our waterways, and then of course into the Gulf of Mexico. So there's so much we can do every day that will change those tides. In Louisiana, it costs us about $40 million to fight the litter problem. And I think we all agree that that's money that could best be used in our schools to pay our teachers or the healthcare providers. And as a country, the United States spends about $11.5 billion. So it's not necessary. Like, it is one of those really expensive problems that affects the economy. It affects wildlife. It affects, property values, just about every aspect of our lives. And it is 100% preventable, and it can be solved by people just taking care of their own space and being personally responsible for their actions. And that's the good news, is that we can change this. And it's through education, it's through awareness, and it's just through persistence.
Absolutely. And that's actually some of the comments that we have was about educating our children, making sure that we communicate with our children that litter is unacceptable, that it is costly, it is illegal, it is harmful, and it's preventable. So we can educate our children about that, make a big difference. And then we have a comment about making sure that we pick it up, that we take that personal responsibility from our own places. If the litter has happened, it is our job to make sure we get rid of that from the environment. We can't wait for someone else to do it. We need to take care of it ourselves. So those are great answers, and I appreciate that. So with education, I know Keep Louisiana Beautiful, for instance, offers some educational materials on litter. Susan, would you mind sharing a little bit about Keep Louisiana Beautiful and their educational opportunities?
Sure. So we created an environmental education program several years ago for formal and non-formal educators. It is located on our website. It is free for anyone to download and use. And it is 11 lesson plans that cover topics such as what is litter and recycling and reusing, reducing, watershed, and citizenship too, because I think that's an important part of this is everyone understanding the role that they play in their community. And so along with those lessons are wonderful activities that people can do and worksheets that you can print out with the kids. It's aimed for kindergarten through 5th grade. For teachers, it lines up with the state student standards. And those informal educators that I mentioned, that's every parent, that's Girl Scout leaders, that's Sunday school leaders, summer camps. It can be used in so many different ways. And now, especially when people are homeschooling and looking for activities to do with their children while we have some extra time, it really is a perfect time to go to our website, download some of these, take a look at them, and it's all kinds of things. You can take a gallon milk jug and turn it into a bird feeder. We really have just a host of different things. And so while we have this time and we're looking for educational things to do with our children, it's a good time to go and explore some of those resources that we have.
All right, thank you very much. So I've placed the website for Keep Louisiana Beautiful on the screen there. It is keeplouisianabeautiful.org. If you would like to visit that anytime. I'd also like to share about the Wetland Wednesdays program with you, with the audience real quick. So Youth Wetlands program also provides curriculum to Louisiana students. And we focus on wetlands, and unfortunately, litter does impact wetlands very severely. So we also offer some educational resources on that. We have a new program while people are out of school right now that we're able to provide called Wetland Wednesdays. The last couple of weeks have been focused on examining our wetlands, and we discovered there was a problem with them. And so this week, we actually went and did a litter cleanup, and we show you how to do that litter cleanup safely, how to quantify the litter that you find, and how to take that information and maybe make some decisions about actions you can take to help your area. So yeah, please visit and download that activity from the website that you see. And let me bring Susan back. Hi. So I've got Ms. Russell with us again from Keep Louisiana Beautiful. Again, I want to thank our audience that joined us today and bared with us while we did our first live video feed. I had a lot of fun.
Brian, I'd also like to mention that we have a campaign going on called Love the Boot at Home. As you see behind me, you can see the logo. And on our homepage, we have identified 21 activities or tips that people can do at home while they are social distancing and while they are listening to the stay-at-home orders. We're all being told all the things we can't do, and Keep Louisiana Beautiful's come up with a number of things that you can do. And our hope is that after practicing these 21 tips, that they'll become habits. And once we, the stay-at-home orders are lifted, that that we continue with those positive actions. And so there are tips like order online and have delivered and start a vegetable garden or an herb garden or plant a tree. It also encourages people to download the lessons and do some of those lessons with their children. It's also a good time. People are out walking, and we mentioned about, most litters 4 inches or smaller. So when you're in a car driving 45 miles an hour, you don't notice half the litter that's out there. But now that we're all walking in our neighborhoods, we notice it and it becomes alarming. So we think that heightened awareness will be a good tool and hopefully motivate people to make that change. And we're also encouraging people that while you're out, grab a bag and some garden gloves and pick up litter. There's still a safe way to do it. We want to make sure everyone stays safe. So those gloves need to be washed, and we need to make sure that we are continue to be safe. Plogging is kind of a new craze. It combines jogging with litter pickup. So there's a number of things that we can do, and at the same time show how we love the boot. So we're encouraging people to hashtag love the boot, show pictures and videos of you using your reusable water bottle, or planting a tree, or whatever you're doing in your neighborhood, at your home, in your community, to make Louisiana a cleaner and more beautiful place to live.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you again very much for joining us today. And thank you, audience, for watching with us today. If you have any more comments about what are some actions that you can take to help clean up litter or to help reduce plastic use, if you share those in the comments, this video will be saved, and so people can share that as well. And as Ms. Russell said, if you hashtag a picture with Love the Boot, we'll make sure we share that as well. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and end our stream, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Everybody stay safe.